I am thrilled to have with me Gabriela Phoenix. There's a new name for you. Gabriela Popescu. Am I saying that correct, Gabriela?
Pretty close, Popescu.
Popescu?
Popescu, yes.
I've gallivanted all over the world. I love names and cultures, and so I do like to try and get them straight. And I forgot to get it clear with you before I started. But that's not unusual for me. Anyhow, I want to welcome you here. I'm just going to mention that Gabriela and I have met in a book writing club group. We are both writing our books. Egads, what a job. And that's how we've met. And to be able to meet each of these individuals where we're going deep, it is really amazing to come together across the world. Gabriela, you're a holistic mindset advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Advisor versus a coach, which is interesting. Advisor. Holistic mindset advisor. And after reaching rock bottom, because we all had to come up, why are we writing this book? After reaching rock bottom was a pivotal moment for Gabriela. Having reached her breaking point, she found the strength to leave the toxic relationship and began her journey of healing. And thus we come together. Tell us a little bit about you, Gabriela, and where you would like to start sharing in our conversation today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's always great connecting with like-minded individuals. So where do I start? I think I'm a firm believer that 99% of the situations that come up in our adult life are connected to our childhood. And not necessarily a reflection of how our parents interacted with us, but how we observe the world. And, between 0 and 7, the ages of 0 and 7, that's where we form our beliefs. That's where we interact with the world and we decide whether it's safe or dangerous. That's where we decide if people are there to support us or harm us. And even though I've had a very happy childhood, I grew up in Romania. I was born in Romania.
Okay.
And I lived through the communist regime being taken down. I was 4 years old when I was hiding with my mom so that the bullets that were being shot at all the homes that we were in, so that we would not get hurt. So that's my 4-year-old experience of the world.
Oh, wow. I mean, just to let that sink in a little bit. I mean, I look at my childhood and out on the farm and everything was safe that way. I mean, I didn't have to live through war and bullets. That doesn't diminish what I went through myself. But it's so important, this age 0 to 7. They say, give me a child to the age of 6 and I've got them for life kind of thing. And what happens to us in those formative years stays with us.
Yes.
And then when Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living, if you and I and everyone else that has come to the healing journey has not looked back to see what occurred, not to stare back and blame, but to go back and cry out the pain if that's what it requires. For me, it was cry out the pain. Really look at it, reframe it, and understand it. And I think that's what I haven't figured out how people in war reframe and get through that, although I know several. But if you have any insight to how do you reconcile war and bullets, I would love that, but only if you've got a perspective on that. Especially with the wars going on in Ukraine and Russia with their fighting and all the children that are going through. The adults, it's bad enough they're going through it, but the children are seeing it and living it too. And I haven't got that straight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I never expected to start with that, but that's what we started today. So that's what came forward. I think Warren Bullets. I mean, my experience was very limited in comparison to what other people are going through and experiencing, especially in Ukraine. And I wouldn't dare compare it to that because it was very minimal.
And that's the other interesting, just before you go on through.
Yeah.
I have learned where I think, well, somebody was touched. You know, my daughter said, well, somebody touched me. That nothing major happened, but in her mind, it was major. And so I find that emotionally, it doesn't matter. We're not here to compare and compete on who got the worst rub of the deal. You know, it's not that, is it? I think the impact and the trauma is as deep for each. But just war just seems so much further out there for me.
Well, I think the way that I've reconciled it is by choosing to look at positive experiences and seeing the imbalance of positive experiences versus negative, and realizing and acknowledging that the world is a safe place, and that people are good, and that things, you know, that things are, there are people that have good intentions, and that was just one limited experience that I've had, and the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah, I think that's nailing it right on. I didn't know whether that would work for something so far extremely traumatic as bodies in front of you. I mean, my family that I have adopted over, they're in Uganda now, but when they were escaping Burundi, they were basically stepping over bloody bodies and walking, you know, getting through the blood. They had to go and clean the blood off after them. And the children, you know, what do you call those little bombs you drop in, pull the thing and drop them in over. If there was a light in the wall, they would throw those up and over the wall, and they wouldn't remove the children. A child was saying to me, but they didn't even remove the little children, that they had to see it. And yeah, it makes an impact that never leaves. I know with my book, I'm going for my dark night of the soul and working from there. I don't know what you're doing with your book, but to know that we're going through things that changed our lives and unraveling that, I think that would probably be the best way to say it. So reconciling with recognizing there are more good people than harmful people, I guess, and the balance. How long did it take you as a child, or did you ever drop that?
Well, to be fair, I wasn't necessarily encouraged to express my emotions. Expressing my emotions was equated to misbehaving and not being proper, because, you know, in the Romanian society and in the intellectual community, and my parents were both very highly on you know, my mom has a PhD in physics. My dad was a doctor, second generation doctor. So yeah, so they're in a really, you know, they're in the top of the society, right? If you looked at that. And yes, so I had to be the perfect child. I had to behave and represent them well. And so, yeah,
I'm laughing because I'm so much older than you are, but I had the same thing. So maybe Romania and the older cultures actually, we're just starting to catch up and get out of that, perhaps.
Yeah. And I you know, I don't think there was any ill will. It was just how everyone was raised and how we were. That was just the way of being. So yeah.
So today, Gabriela, you're a holistic mindset advisor. You're the owner of Phoenix Medicine, a writer and a podcast host. You have your own podcast. Very good. And you're a speaker. And you're a passionate advocate for women's empowerment, supporting communities of sisterhood. I love it when we come together as sisters and recognize it. You know, I tend to don't want to network so much as sisterhood. work. How have you progressed to that? You've claimed the name Phoenix in the middle of your name, and your work is Phoenix Medicine. Fill us in on how all of that came together, from Romania and some bullets flying and the society same. Actually, it sounds the same as mine, but I'm not an old gal. I'm probably twice your age.
Probably not. No, I'm turning 40 this year, so I'm up there.
You're up there. But it's interesting. How did you get into this holistic medicine?
Well, I'm gonna give you a little bit more background. So one of the traumatic events in my life was, the revolution, and then 7-8 years later, my dad passed away. So I've had a string of experiences that showed me that the world is not good.
Yeah.
So then as a result, after my dad passed away, for the next 15 years or so, I was literally just creating chaos and looking at the world as this is happening to me instead of for me. And I really looked at the world as everyone else's fault and not my own of what's happening and what I'm creating. And so in that cycle of 15 years, I continuously became more and more toxic, to the point that I attracted the same toxicity into my life. And then after that, after a year and a half of that toxic relationship and life, I had a breaking point, and that's kind of where I started my healing journey and my devotion to holistic healing.
And being a strong woman, naturally we want to help other. Actually, I think the natural is other strong women that haven't found that step forward yet, but they're into that burning out, or they're breaking down. Things are getting thinner. Things are starting to kind of ravel, and it takes us that long because we're both strong, and I think many women are. It just takes us longer to get that breaking point, and once we reach that point, then we're ready to step into the healing and say there's got to be more. And you and I know there's always more.
Absolutely.
There's always more. How does this Phoenix medicine work? Tell us about that.
Sure. And to give you a background on why Phoenix,
Yes.
Phoenix as in the mystical bird that constantly gets recreated, right? I constantly transform and change. Everyone does. You're not the same as you were yesterday or 10 years ago.
That's right.
So just the idea of constant rebirth and transformation, that's what Phoenix stands for me, and that's what it means to me, is that I am constantly transforming, you're constantly transforming, and it's the only way to evolve, or it's the only way through anything that you're experiencing, trauma, you're being stuck in life or in one area of life for some reason. All of that is just the step before transformation.
And that's all part of change.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is feared more than change. But if we didn't have change, life would be so boring. So one time we want change, but well, I'm bored. I used to have my kids, we'd be out camping. They'd say, I'm bored. Oh, I've got things for you to do. You've got this to clean and that to tidy up. And they disappeared. They weren't bored anymore, because to be bored means no change. Mm-hmm. And I love the Phoenix rising and the rebirthing. I want you to go into that a little bit more, because I don't think people get it when we said, oh, I was just born again. We think of born again religions. We think of born again smokers, smokers that have given up smoking. They're the worst ones to live with for the longest time. Or someone who gives up alcohol. Oh, my goodness, they just drive you crazy for a while. But that rebirthing really is what moves us forward. And it happens over and over and over again as we move through our obstacles. How do you lead somebody through their process.
Well, I think so. I've experimented and I've taken many trainings, different trainings, which is why my title is holistic, because I use different tools and different methodologies. But I think one of the best tools to clear the limiting beliefs that someone is experiencing is through taking a deep inventory of all their limiting beliefs in one area of life, and then releasing those. And I know some people cringe when I say NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, and that's their choice. I think whatever tool you're using, it depends on the intention of the person using it. So if you have someone whose intention is to manipulate you or to harm you, then you will have that experience. And that is I think it's a personal decision that each person makes when they embark on a healing opportunity or on a healing path. Do they connect and trust the practitioner?
That's the bottom line, isn't it? Because as you were saying, NLP and neuro-linguistic programming and all of that stuff, and then you could add in hypnosis, and you can even just add in persuasion, influence, power. Yeah. We can add in anything. It's like getting these spam calls, these scam calls. You know, we have to be aware of what's going on. If it doesn't feel right, we know, you know, the little hairs going up on the back of the head, or any energy that's repelling it. Stop and look at it, and then find out if the world is bad or good at that moment, but only for that. Yeah. We really have to discern. So hopefully nobody would worry about whether it's NLP, because I keep forgetting what it is, other than neuro, which is the mind, linguistic, which is voice, back to talk therapy. If you go to a psychologist, like, I think we all need to just relax and give it a rest, worrying about the labels and finding our way to talk ourselves forward. So regardless of the tool you're using, how do you take them through it?
Yeah. So pretty simple, releasing the negative emotions and beliefs as it relates to whatever area of life we're working on. And then creating who they want to become. So creating an avatar, or just you 2.0. I like to say 3.0 because 2.0 is it's overused. So it's 2.0. Who are you? Who do you want to be to have the best life? And really like creating a plan around that, taking action, and building the habits necessary to support that path.
And that's not the be all and the end all. I mean, people can understand it's elastic. I like that 1.0, 2.0. In layman's terms, it'd be version 1, version 2, version 3. So I look back to, you know, a few decades ago, and I could say, oh, there was my first version. But I just kept growing, and so did you. We keep expanding. So we'll have new versions until we cross the veil. So we keep expanding. But you're right, we choose from our intention, from our fear. Our fear blocks us. If I'm going into a new town and afraid, you know, I could be saying, oh my goodness, I've just heard about that at Romania. Has nothing to do with Romania of today. But I could go to Romania expecting it to be a terrible place, and I'll go there in fear and be scared and looking around. That's not what it is. I have to go in expecting the good, and it's going to be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what you're doing. You're reframing.
Yeah, it's a lot of reframing, but also, 99% of what we do on a day-to-day basis happens on the unconscious mind, because we do it on autopilot. We do it automatically. And so if you want to have, the life of your dreams, if you have the beliefs and values that you've created when you were young, those no longer align with where you want to go. And so what we do is clear out all that baggage that no longer serves you, so that we can instill the values you want, and also build the habits to build the beliefs to build the new mindset. And I think that's incredibly powerful, because we are 100%. What I also work with people is in helping them really understand and applying that you are 100% responsible for what you're creating. And if you want to have a great experience, if you will have a great experience. But if you expect to have a terrible experience, that's exactly what you're going to have. In both situations, you're correct.
That's right. That's scary, isn't it? And I love that we only have to plan like 5 years from now. Who do you want to be? Yes. Because it's hard to imagine, I got my eye on 105. It's kind of hard to imagine that far out who I want to be, because I could just be that now if I knew what my circumstances will be then, how much more growth I can have. You see, and that's the glory of being able to expand. The combination between traditional healing practices and the newer, I don't think they're really new, I think they're ancient as well, but newer to many of our people in this North American continent. The old traditions that we call woo-woo world. Oh, voodoo, yeah, when you do that voodoo to me. The Reiki, the energy, all of the energy work. How do you help people realize that energy is real? First off, you can feel the difference, and that our life is really all based around feeling and emotion. Comes up here to our thought that we suppress them or we express them. Where do you go with that?
When you say traditional healing, what does that mean to you? Or like, what's your definition of that?
Yes, because I know in the indigenous world, traditional healing would be the ancient.
Right.
But in this world, when my son was with cancer and I so wanted him to go and do some energy work as well as some other techniques, he said, I won't leave my family while I'm dying. And I'm saying, but take the whole family with you for 6 weeks to this alternative place. But he couldn't go past that. I'm doing what the doctors tell me. And I realized, that's the only way he was going to cope with it. I'm doing what the doctors tell me. And so that would be, in terms of traditional medicine, our modern medicine, and how dependent we are on what does the doctor say, versus those of us who have recognized the old ancients, I guess I'll call them ancient versus modern, that there's a blend there that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately anything and everything could be reframed, and the answer that you get through the communication you have is feedback for, okay, maybe what I need to do is rephrase this in a way that gets through to my client. But even for people that are very stubborn about energy work or about agreeing that there is a mind-body connection and soul-body connection when it comes to healing, I assign books. Like, one of my favorite books is The Divided Mind by Dr. John Sterno, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Did he not just, I think that's the book I've just picked up, not that title, but Healing Your Back Without...
Yes,
I think it's Sarno. Yes.
That's him.
Yes. The pain that's repressed in the subconscious that we're not even aware of. So where I'm at right now, more recently, the ancestors have been coming up in conversation. And with me, with my arthritis, they're saying, yeah, but my sister and I just say, oh, that's our family thing. So we just accept the arthritis. And somebody else came in, Moira, and said, no, even arthritis, that's an ancestral thing. That's the suppressed. So I've been working around that, and it's starting to release it. I don't know how far it will go, because you get a certain amount of physical damage. I don't know whether that can all go or not, but it's so exciting. I've just opened my mind to a whole new process that I'm chasing down with my automatic writing and my emotions and so on. That's, I think, what you're talking about. That's why I'm saying, 5 years from now, we're going to have so much more we open our mind to, and we don't have to be the finished product that we're designing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, John Sterno, he basically says that 90%, 99% of disease happens in the psyche. And so if something is bothering you on an emotional or soul level and you're not addressing it, you're letting it fester, just like you said, suppression, right? You're not expressing it, you're not doing anything with it, then your unconscious mind is going to send you diseases to like say, hey, wake up. You got to address this right now. And then if you don't address it on an emotional or spiritual level, then you address it with a Western doctor or a Western solution. You heal it, and then it migrates to a different part of your body. And people have done surgeries, like
Yes.
back surgeries, neck surgeries.
Carpal tunnels, 2 of them.
Yes. And they felt great for 6 months, and then they developed something else. And just like you said, also your ancestors are coming. There's also the belief, and I 100% believe this, is that if you have significant trauma in past lives, if you believe in reincarnation, and you haven't resolved it in a past life, let's say you were impaled or you were stabbed in a past life, and you died and you didn't get a chance to process it, you're carrying it into the next life, and you have physical diseases or symptoms that perpetuate over decades until it's addressed on the spiritual or emotional level. So, yeah.
And I might mention that for our listeners, if reincarnation in past lives doesn't resonate, once again, just think about those little rebirths that we have through this life. It's the same thing. I'm not the same person I was as a child. I mean, personality will be there, but I don't think the same way. I don't make the same decisions, so I wasn't the same child as the teenager, as the young mom, as the businesswoman, and so on. So we keep having those rebirths here. So we can even think about those as little mini lives that we've occurred, just so that you can open your mind to the idea. I think that's so. Past lives are just past little mini lives within this life will work. How do you go about the reframing? I do automatic writing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's journaling. What's some tips and tricks that people can take away to?
Sure. I think one of the biggest reframes or tools that I've used and I've received as a client. Bottom line, I think everyone needs help, and either an advisor or a coach or psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever tool or methodology works for you. You need an outside perspective because we have only 126 bits of attention at a given time, and we get 2 million bits of data at any given moment. And so we distort, delete, and generalize information to make it so that we could process it so that we don't shut down because it's overwhelming. And so you need an outside perspective because you can't see your blind spots. And so because of that, I think looking at anything as bad as it could be, like rape, sexual assault for a child, what is the lesson in that? And not to say that you are, I hear this a lot where, well, you can't be responsible for every bad thing that has happened. So it's true, you cannot, not necessarily. However, if you believe in past lives and life contracts, then in a way you are, because I believe that we all have life contracts that we agreed to before we would reincarnate. So we decide what lessons we want in our life. But if you don't have that belief, simply playing and working with the idea of how is this a lesson or how can I learn from it, instead of, oh, this is such a terrible, bad thing that has happened to me. This is the worst thing. I'm never going to get over it type of mentality. It's not supportive. It doesn't help you. And it's going to make you feel better. Just try to play with it. And I think automatic writing is another great tool. I love that you mentioned it and that you're using it. It's incredibly powerful.
It
Just
is.
putting pen to paper and writing for 20 minutes. And if you don't know what to write, just say, I don't know what to write. And then eventually it's going to start pouring onto the pages and then reflecting on what has come through.
It is absolutely awesome. And again, I want to just jump back to anyone in our audience that's listening that doesn't believe in the past lives, because I have no problem with those. I mean, but I want people to make sure they can open their mind and don't get stuck with that. Even in this life, something traumatic happened as a child. As you mentioned, it could have been rape and sexual abuse and so on, even as a child. So we're to be kept safe. Our parents are to look after, societies look after us as a child. That's what is expected. And it didn't happen. Somehow awful things happened to you. Where does your responsibility come in for that? It doesn't necessarily come in that the child was responsible. But today, 20 years later, you have a life ahead of you. And you are responsible to whether or not you're going to keep that anger festered down in the subconscious. I go to prison. I've been going to prison for over 20 years. And there are many where all of those terrible things festered into anger and exploded, and now they're in prison. So if you don't want to live that way, you have to go back and say, I'm responsible today for what I'm going to do with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
that brings the responsibility. So why am I responsible? Don't worry about past lives, folks, if that upsets you. Just go with this life. Something happened to you awful. And your responsibility today is to let the load go off your back, look back and reframe it and say, that was bullshit. That was a terrible thing to have happen to me. But I have to let it go so I can be free. That's what the inmates learn over time in prison, that they have to let it go. Whether they did it, most of the ones that caused any of that crap had it done to them and didn't know another way, or they repressed it and blew up.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not just physical, right? Not just the physical reaction, an explosion of emotion that happens. Sometimes it's cancer, or it's other disease that you internalize, and ultimately you're hurting yourself. So another tool is forgiveness, right? Forgiveness of the person that did you wrong, and of yourself, because you allowed it to happen, because that was a big aha for me, and it was one of the hardest things I've done. Forgiving myself for allowing the things that happened to go on for so long.
It's deep, exhausting work, but boy, it's so worth it. I mean, I know my book is from a life of pain to a life of joy and adventure, breaking free. And your book is, let me see here, Uncensored Phoenix. I read the title of that book and think, you're going from where you were silenced and used to no more. I am enough. I am worthy. I am embodied. That's your tagline to it.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. And I think I love the word uncensored, because I think there's a lot of repression of what we can and cannot say. And it's unnecessary. And I think that being able to just speak your mind, it's an act of revolution and courage right now. I think a lot of people suppress what they're saying, or they think of ways to make it diplomatic and PC. And it's become an extreme. I think it's become a little insane, to be honest.
Well, it's becoming fear-based again, isn't it? You know, as rightfully so, DEI comes in, but then well, crap, I don't know what to say if I run into another culture, because then, you're going to say the wrong thing, so you zip up, or you're going to say it and get whacked, So it comes from all sides. It's not just the whites. It's not the blacks. It's not the browns. It's everybody. Everybody's afraid to break that little bit of ice. But when our intention is curiosity and learning and love. We go back to intention again, reframing it. Like, boy, if you've gone to the World Fair and seen all of these cultures, or you go to Disney World and see it's a small world, and you have all of those cultures, one tent after the other. Life and cultures are just an absolute festival, and we run away in fear, afraid to learn about each other. Because if we learn about each other, yeah, that means we'll be friends, and we won't be able to fight and throw stones. Huh.
What a concept. United versus divided by all the different labels that society throws at us.
That's what's been happening. Well, I think I'm just going to, be attentive to the time here a little bit, but also, what would you like to say? Because I know I'm looking forward to your book, Uncensored Phoenix, Uncensored and Rising from the Ashes again. Wow. And again and again and again. Enough, worthy, and embodied. How would you like to have closing comments for our audience for today?
I think if you haven't been curious, learn how to explore things that you don't understand, and choose not to pass judgment, but instead understand where things are coming from. I think you can't have curiosity and judgment at the same time. And so just try new things, explore new things that you may not necessarily feel comfortable trying. What that does is expand your capacity for healing, for understanding, and for connecting with one another.
Beautiful. Thank you. It has been a pleasure having you here, Gabriela. And I'm so happy we've met and we're in the group, and our books will come out in September somewhere. We did have to miss a week. Maybe it'll be October, but they're going to come fast. Breaking Free and Phoenix Rising. Oh, wow. Uncensored. There's so much happening. And I'm so happy you were here. Thank you so much.